Alrighty, so it's that time of the year again where it's time to fill out the playoff bracket and pick my MLS Cup winner as the playoffs is about to begin in a couple of days. Now, last year I actually did not do this video and did not fill out a playoff bracket, and I did explain last year there is a good reason why I decided not to do it. Well, there's actually a couple of good reasons. One of the reasons is that last year, because of the COVID pandemic and how the season not only was shortened, but it was basically so stop and go, and there was like 3 different stoppage during that season. It was almost impossible to predict it, and not to mention the fact that pretty much last year the way that the season ended, where points per game was actually determined the standings, and there was even one team, that was the Rapids, that didn't even play like most of their games. And yeah, I mean, it was almost impossible to predict last year's playoffs. And obviously the other big reason is that once we get into the playoffs, it'll also feel like it was a survival of the fittest, with the way that whoever is not just going to be the most talented team, but also who can survive a potential COVID outbreak that happened within the team, most likely will win MLS Cup. And ironically, the team that eventually won MLS Cup did had to go through a COVID outbreak, that is the Columbus Crew, and somehow they survived that, and then they of course survived some injuries to some of their most important player in MLS Cup, and somehow pull off a big upset against the Seattle Sounders in MLS Cup. So are we going to see maybe something similar this year? We hope not, in terms of the case that hopefully no team is going to go through a COVID outbreak. I mean, I doubt it's going to happen, because this season I don't think any team has had to go through a COVID outbreak. In fact, it's been a while since I've even heard a player that has to take times off because they've been dealing with COVID. Well, I think I've heard some cases, but it's not as much as what we saw from last season. So that's why this year get a chance to kind of do a playoff prediction and fill the bracket without having to deal with those circumstances that I had to deal with last year. So with that being said, let us actually begin. And oh, by the way, I do apologize if the bracket does not look perfect. I did this right before I go to work, so that's why I kind of rushed it in terms of making this bracket. But what's more important is you want to hear me who is going to pick MLS Cup. And as I said, with how my prediction has gone, don't be surprised this is going to be completely wrong. And I wouldn't even be surprised if this bracket will get bust by just the first game in the playoffs. But with that being said, let us actually start with the Western Conference first. And yes, I'm actually starting the West first. And the first game we're going to talk about, oh look, it's the Portland Timbers versus Minnesota. It's my team that is playing in the playoffs, and to just show you why I am not going to be biased during this postseason, or not going to be biased in terms of filling out this bracket, I picked the Timbers to beat Minnesota. Now, theoretically, this was probably the best draw that the Loons could have when they play in the playoffs on the road, with the way that they're playing against a team that they have a good history, at least in recent meetings, and the fact that it's been a while since Minnesota has actually lost to the Portland Timbers. They won both of their meetings, both home and away, this season. But I just have a feeling that dominance probably is going to end in this game, because there's no doubt this is probably the strongest Portland Timbers side that this Minnesota team is going to face. And knowing the fact that this team has also been very inconsistent down the stretch, yeah, I just don't trust that this team is going to do much. I mean, unless if Reynoso can be Reynoso, or be like that guy in the playoffs last season, or the fact that the attack can actually wake up after it's been kind of mostly underachieving this season. And also the defense, who really down the stretch they started to look really bad, and you do not want to have a bad defense facing against one of the most potent attack that is that Portland Timbers front three. So with that, all that question aside, again, I just feel like I don't believe it's going to happen. I've said before where, in some way, maybe making the playoffs might, as good as it is, maybe it could be a worse way, not knowing the fact that, yeah, this team probably is going to underachieve one more time, and I have a feeling they're probably going to lose this game against the Portland Timbers. But now moving on to the next game, the Sporting KC versus Vancouver, and this is where I begin my first bold prediction of this playoffs. And yes, I'm jumping on the bandwagon. I am literally picking the Vancouver Whitecaps to beat Sporting KC. And, it's not just the fact that Vancouver is heading into the playoffs as one of the hottest teams in the league. And I mentioned many times that they are a dark horse. And they're pretty much has nothing to lose coming into this game and playing with no pressure whatsoever. But I'm really concerned in terms of the fact that how much that the damage that Peter Vermees has done to his team, which he run that his team down the ground, and now with them suffering with a lot of their players suffering from injuries, and not knowing whether or not if most of those players is going to be back in the first game of the playoffs. Yeah, that's just makes me kind of concerned. I mean, if those players are able to come back and they're able to be 100% fit, then there's no doubt that I think Sporting KC can definitely win against the Whitecaps. But if they can, then the Whitecaps has a chance. And again, this Whitecaps team, there's just something about this team, and especially not just the fact that they've been red hot lately, but the resilience that they have shown, a team that just refused to give up. That is usually always the most dangerous team to face in the playoffs, where when you face a team that is hot and have that sense of belief that they will never give up, it can be a living nightmare. And again, I think the Whitecaps are going to win this game. And like I said, I'm jumping on the bandwagon. I think Vinny Sartini is going to do his magic, and it's going to continue into the playoffs as they beat Sporting KC in the first round. Now, the Whitecaps, of course, will be facing in the second round against the Seattle Sounders, and unfortunately, I'm not going to go crazy in terms of this prediction. I mean, I know I'm kind of tempted to say that RSL could maybe pull off an upset. I mean, they've done it before. You look what they did against LAFC back in 2018, where everybody thought that LAFC was going to win that game, and then RSL basically shocked everybody and win that game in the first round of the playoffs. But yeah, this is the Seattle Sounders. And even though I know the Sounders, who, believe it or not, they're actually heading into this playoff kind of ice cold. Like, I knew the Sounders was not heading into the playoffs very well, but I didn't know when I actually look on the stats that they actually have not won a single game in the last I think 5 games that they had. So they're kind of coming into this playoffs with a bit of a winless run. But that being said, despite the fact that is the case, it is still the Seattle Sounders. Brian Schmitz is going to trying to get this team round up, and especially the fact that if they are going to get some of their attacking players like Rui Diaz and Ladero and Jordan Morris 100% healthy, this team is the team to beat in the Western Conference. And yeah, I mean, I think there's going to be probably no upset in this one. I think the Sounders should win this game against RSL, and especially if RSL and Pablo Mastroeni decide to open up in this game. Yeah, that would be. I think if you're Pablo Mastroeni, as much as you want to play that free flowing soccer that they tends to play down the stretch, this is definitely not a game to do so, because if you play that free flowing soccer against the Seattle Sounders team, you are going to get punished every single game. So yeah, I mean, I think it would be a big mistake if he does that. And if he decided to maybe kind of play like that conservative or more compact kind of game against Sporting KC, I mean, it might work out, but eventually I think the Sounders just have too much firepower. And unless if Damir Krylak can create some more magic for this RSL team, it's just too much for RSL to handle. Especially, I do not trust that back line against one of the most potent attack in the league, that is the Seattle Sounders. So now we move to the Eastern Conference, and this is where I need to move a little bit, because I need to write the down who of course will be moving on in the second round between NYCFC versus Atlanta. And again, this is probably a very popular upset pick, which again, I don't know if it's really an upset when you have a 4th seed take on the 5th seed, because they're kind of evenly matched. But I would say that Atlanta is going to win this game against NYCFC. And the easy way for me to say is I still don't trust NYCFC, especially when they get into the playoffs. Yes, they have a lot of talented players, but are those talented players going to deliver like we've seen in the past couple of years? Well, it seems like the last couple of years that answer is probably no, but maybe they can, of course, change that narrative this season, where they're playing against an Atlanta team that, again, I feel like people are not giving Atlanta enough credit. I mean, that's kind of weird to say because I feel like the league and especially the media for a while they have always gave Atlanta credit. In fact, they maybe gave them too much credit, and this is when people are saying that the league tends to have a love fest with Atlanta. When they came into the league and especially when they started good, but it seems like maybe that love fest and that love child that the league had with Atlanta kind of disappeared when they started sucking last year, and maybe that's why they're not getting as attention as they were maybe in the first couple of years, and maybe Atlanta fans might say the same thing too. But nevertheless, I think this is a really strong team, and this is a team that is capable of once again going deep into the playoffs, and they have players to do so. I mean, look at Joseph Martinez. He's a guy that I guarantee you, if you have Joseph Martinez in your team, you can go deep into the playoffs. He scores some big goals in big times, and especially down the stretch, he has really started to look like the Joseph Martinez of old, and that is definitely great news if you're an Atlanta United fan. But now, moving on to the next one, which is Nashville versus Orlando, and I'm going to pick the road team to win this one. And this is another game where I think it's a popular upset pick. And coming into this game, it's between two teams that isn't really in the best of form, but the reason why I pick Orlando in this one is that I think they have just enough power, just the enough firepower to basically break down this Nashville defense. I mean, don't get me wrong, this Nashville defense, I've said it many times, it is one of the hardest teams to trying to solve, and that I'm pretty sure they're going to be up for it again in this one. But coming into this game, I know that both defense are really good. But in terms of going forward on the attacking end, I would give Orlando City the edge of this, and I think that's the edge of them moving on into this next game. I mean, unless if Hani Mukhtar can continue to produce his magic that he did in the regular season, I just don't see who else is going to score the goals for this Nashville team. I mean, maybe CJ Sapong if he can rediscover that good form that he had in the summer. I mean, he's been really cold lately. Same goes with Randall Leao. Hasn't really had the best of season. And also a guy that they signed as a DP in Hunda Kadic or Ake Loba. Those players haven't really showed up on the attack and hasn't contributed for a while now. So yeah, there's no doubt that this team is basically Hani Mukhtar on the attack and hope that he can carry the team. And when you have a one-man player like that, it's not very often we see teams go very, very far. Compared to Orlando City, they have difference maker and Daryl DK, Nani, and Chris Mueller, and they're going to be coming big in this game to score the goals for Orlando City to pull off an upset in this one. But now moving on to the Philadelphia Union versus the Red Bulls, and I'm picking the Union to win this. Again, I think it's going to be more disappointment for Red Bulls fans in this one, and I feel like this could also be a game where I think maybe people are going to be surprised how close this game is going to be. I don't think the Union is going to completely blow out the Red Bulls because that's not how the Union is. The Union don't blow out a team. They tend to love to play this grinding kind of game where they just do enough to get all 3 points, and in some way that's kind of the same thing for the Red Bulls. And when you have the two teams that play in that same grinding style, I have a feeling this could be a game where maybe one goal could be the difference. I mean, this is just a game where if you expect to see some great attacking firepower, then this is probably not the game you want to watch. But if you're a kind of a fan that want to watch some smash mouth kind of soccer, this is definitely the game to watch. I mean, there's going to be some very physical play in this, and both of these teams, they don't like each other because of the close proximity. But mainly the other thing that makes them don't like each other is that they have playoff history before, and the Red Bulls want to get some revenge after what happened in, I believe, was it 2018 or 2019? I think it was 2019 when they lost to the Union in extra time in that crazy 4-3 game, and I don't think this is going to be like that. I'll be surprised if it is that way because, again, both of these teams have very solid defense, and they tend to like to play that style where they're trying to grind you out throughout the full 90 minutes and take advantage of a chance to get all 3 points at the end of the day. And at the end of the day, I think the Union does have more of those difference maker than the Red Bulls. I mean, not saying that the Red Bulls don't have them, but in terms of talent-wise, the Unions definitely have more of those. So now we move on to round number 2, and at round number 2, we got the Colorado Rapids versus the Portland Timbers, and I'm going to say the Timbers are going to win this. And again, one of the things that I worry about the Rapids coming in is that, as great as what Robin Fraser has done to this team, and it's great that they, of course, got the number one seed, but the thing that I do worry about this team heading into the playoffs is that they don't really have a lot of star players that, in the playoffs, you need to have some of your star player to be able to perform, and, you because the Rapids don't really have that could be maybe a bit of a concern, and especially with the way that this Rapids team in some way kind of reminds me a little bit of the FC Dallas team a couple of years ago. Where I remember a couple of years ago I talked about how this FC Dallas team doesn't have a star-studded player, but they're a very hard-working team, and they always find a way to score goals in the end. And then toward the end of the season, that's when things start to kind of look bleak. And unsurprisingly, when they do play in the playoffs at home, and they actually face against the Portland Timbers, ironically, they lost that one. And I'm not saying that this could happen the same with the Rapids, because I truly believe the Rapids, the goals definitely has dried up with this team, especially after that 5-goal performance that they had against LAFC. But knowing the fact that they're facing against the Timber side that knows how to win in the playoffs, and know how to win on the road. I mean, remember in 2018 when they went to MLS Cup? Yeah, most of those games that they play that are clinching games to move on to the next round is on the road. So this team knows how to get it done, and has that playoff experience compared to the Rapids, which they did have that playoff experience from last year. But if you wanted to compare playoff experience between both teams, the Timbers definitely has the edge over that. So yeah, at the end, I'm going to say the Timbers are going to win that one. But now moving on to this one, which is kind of the forgotten Cascadia derby between the Vancouver Whitecaps versus the Seattle Sounders, which, by the way, if this does happen, this also would be a rematch of the 2017 round 2 game between both of these teams. And unfortunately, as much as I want to say that Whitecaps might get revenge against the Sounders, I think this is when the Cinderella story comes to an end, and that, again, I think the Sounders, they should have enough on paper. I mean, I know the Whitecaps are going to try to make it hard on the Sounders to potentially win this game, but at the end of the day, I think the Sounders should win this one. I mean, the last performance that they had against the Whitecaps, which, by the way, the last one they did relatively well, but that was a game where the Sounders didn't really have a lot of their first team player, and in other words, they weren't at their strongest. And then I remember when the Whitecaps did face against the Sounders team that was kind of kind of injured at Lumen's Field last time. Yeah, that was not a pretty game, and certainly a game that Vancouver Whitecaps fan would not want to remember. So yeah, in the end, I think the quality of the Sounders is just too much for the Whitecaps. And again, I'm not saying the Whitecaps won't make this interesting. I think they're definitely going to make it interesting, but ultimately, I think the quality is just much better for the Sounders, and they move on into the conference final. Now, moving on into the Eastern Conference in terms of my prediction for the second round of the Eastern Conference. So you got an interesting game between New England and Atlanta, and I'm going to pick the road team to win in this one. And I'm picking Atlanta to beat New England. And I know a lot of people are picking New England to win MLS Cup because it makes sense. I mean, they are the favorites coming into this tournament, and they are a team that has been kind of unstoppable throughout this regular season. But I think there is one big reason why New England could be struggling in this game against Atlanta, and it isn't had a lot to do with the fact that Atlanta also have a good attacking in core and also play very good defense throughout their game. But one of the things that could be a big down for New England is that this is the first game in 3 weeks for them that they're going to play. And I talked about before where, as much as getting the number 1 seed is great and all, and you, of course, get a bye and you don't have to of course, play in round number 1 and maybe have some disappointment from that. This also means that, that means it's an extra week rest. And when you have 3-week rest, that is a lot of time between the last game that the Revs played to the game that is probably one of the most important games that they're going to be playing this season against Atlanta. And when you have that much of a break, rust is definitely going to be a factor. And especially when you play against an Atlanta team that, Atlanta is going to be fired up after they get that win against NYCFC. yeah, I think that could be a bit of a downfall, and that again, it's a game that if this does happen, I would definitely watch this, and that this would be one of the more entertaining game in the playoffs, because again, both of these teams, they know it's almost like a complete package where pretty much there's not really a lot of weakness you can find for both of these teams. I mean, I guess maybe for Atlanta, the only weakness you could say is that they have trouble in terms of finishing games. And for New England, the weakness for them is that they let opponents in the game a lot of time, and that sometimes they also had to rely on a last minute winner to of course get them over the line, which in the playoffs, yeah, they might have that resilience to do it again, but you just simply cannot rely on that so you can go very deep into the playoffs. But nevertheless, I think that fatigue and that rust that New England is going to have is going to be really the difference. And also, not to mention the fact that I talked about the Supporters Shield curse, and it's a real thing. And as much as I know Bruce Arena is trying to make sure that that's not going to be the case. And last time when Bruce Arena got a team that won the Supporters Shield, they actually went up to win MLS Cup. That is the LA Galaxy. But again, I'm just going to pick the upset in this one, because again, I just feel like Atlanta is going to do it in this one. I think they're going to beat New England on the road. But now moving on to the other second round matchup, which is Orlando and the Philadelphia Union. And in the end, I'm going to say the Union's going to win this one. Again, I expect this is going to be another one of those games where it's going to be relatively low score, because again, both of these teams don't tend to score a lot of goals in some of their game. But in terms of this one, I think the Union, both of these teams does have good attacking quality, but overall, I trust the Union to be able to get it done at home compared to Orlando City, where Orlando this season on the road, they haven't really been that good. And not to mention the early matchup between both of these teams, and how Philly absolutely dominated Orlando City in that game. I just have a feeling it's probably going to be the same case. Now, some people might argue, well, regular season match, you use that to just compare to post season match. But I will argue to you that when you have the quality, and that if you know how to beat a team and you have their number, then it doesn't really make a difference in terms of just making the argument of the fact that, well, a postseason game is going to be different. I mean, sure, it's going to be different in terms of how it feels, but it's not going to be different in terms of the way that if you have the other opponent numbers, and I feel like the Union definitely have Orlando City number this season, yeah, I think they are going to be making it to the conference final. And Jim Curtin wants to kind of make up for what happened last season when they fell in the first hurdle after winning the Supporters Shield. Which now brings us to the conference final, and look at that! The Western Conference final is probably my dream scenario, which is the Cascadia Derby between the Portland Timbers versus the Seattle Sounders. I mean, if you thought that the Cascadia Derby back in 2018, and when both of these teams made the playoffs in the second round, was intense, this is about to get even more intense, because this is actually just a one-off game, unlike the last one where it was a two-legged affair. And I'm not gonna lie, I don't know who's gonna win this game. And in some way, I'm just gonna, that old saying that sometimes you just gotta go with your heart. Well, my heart says the Timbers are gonna win this one, mainly because I think the Timbers, they just have the Sounders number in terms of playing at Lumen's Field. Like, it's been a long time since the Seattle Sounders has been able to beat the Portland Timbers at Lumen's Field. I mean, they technically did beat them in that 2018 playoffs, but in terms of how the aggregate scores went, the Timbers still were able to win that overall. And not to mention the fact that my main concern with the Sounders is something that I actually haven't mentioned yet, but the injuries that they've been having. Well, it was just announced that it seems like they could be without two of their free center back, where they might be without Arriaga throughout the playoffs, and then probably another player, a good defensive player that they're probably going to be missing this playoffs is Nuhu, who got injured during the international break. Now, I'm not saying that the Timbers backline is anything special, and I haven't mentioned the fact that that's kind of maybe one thing that I'm really hoping that they can fix, because remember how I said the Timbers were going to be the best team in the Western Conference, and they end up finishing in 4th place, which is respectable, but definitely not as good as my prediction is. And it feels like I'm trying to make I'm making the same mistake again in this one. But again, I just feel like for me, the Timbers, they just have the Sounders number when they play on the road, whether it's in the playoffs or in the regular season at Lumen's Field. And I think that's probably kind of the only thing that is the difference between both of these teams, because like I said, it is really hard to separate. It's almost like a toss-up in terms of who is going to win, and I won't be surprised. If the Sounders does win, I won't be surprised, because it's just such a hard game to kind of predict. And all I'll say is that if this does happen, you bet that there's going to be some fireworks, and there's going to be some emotion, and even some shithousery that we will see in this conference final. But then we move on to the other conference final, and look at that. The other conference final is also a very interesting matchup, because it's Atlanta versus Philly, who, remember how they play in the CONCACAF Champions League and how that was shithousery at its best. I mean, in the regular season, when they did meet each other 2 more times, we didn't really see as much shithousery as we saw in the CONCACAF Champions League. But I just feel like we're going to have it again in this one, because I think the reason why there was a lot of shithousery during the CONCACAF Champions League is because, well, it's the CONCACAF Champions League. You're going to have crazy things that's going to happen, and you just will always have the bizarre thing that will happen. But it's also because of the fact that it was a knockout game, and how both team know that even it's early in their regular season, this is pretty much a do or die game for them to stay in that competition. And I just feel like it's going to happen again, because, again, this is a knockout game, and especially this time, it's even means more because both of these teams is going to make it to MLS Cup. And in the end, I'm going to say, again, this is another one that is relatively tough, but I'm going to say Atlanta is going to win it. I think Atlanta just have enough difference maker on this team. I mean, when you look at both defense are really good. For some reason my camera started to fog up a little bit. Actually, let me just do this. Let's see. Does it still fog up? Oh, well, I don't know why my camera decided to keep fogging up for a second. Well, let's try this again. Is it still fogged up? Yep, it is still fogged up. Let me just bring this down like this, and then let's see if it works. If it not, I'll probably just restart this. You know what? I'm just gonna restart, or just kind of stop the recording and restart this recording software. All right, looks like the camera is back to not being super blurry. I mean, again, I don't know why that happened, but like I said, I think in the end, Atlanta just have the slight edge in terms of the fact that there's enough difference maker on the attack that they should be able to pull through, because at the end, when you look at the midfield, both teams are pretty solid. In the defense, both teams are very solid too. In the goalkeeping department, both Guzan and Andre Blake are considered 2 of the best goalkeeper in the league. So at the end of the day, if I had to take between Joseph Martinez and Castro Shabelko, you probably know who I am going to pick. Or even if you ask me who I would rather pick, Ezekiel Barco or Jameer Montero, I would say it's probably gonna be Barco with the form that he's been in. Now it brings us to the MLS Cup, which it is actually a rematch of the 2018 MLS Cup between the Portland Timbers versus Atlanta United, but this time it's gonna be happening at Providence Park. And you know what? I'm gonna say the Timbers are gonna win this. And it's been a while since we have seen an away team able to win MLS Cup. In fact, the last away team that has able to win MLS Cup was all the way back in 2016. And there's a good reason why home team always win MLS Cup, because, when you have home field advantage and you have that crowd behind in the biggest game of the season, it can definitely give you a boost. And especially with the Timbers, and I've said many times before, they have considered one, if not the best fan base in the league, and they definitely will lift this team to MLS Cup, and especially want some revenge after 2018. Like, you can't tell me that these Timbers players, even if some of them aren't with that 2018 teams, want some revenge against Atlanta. And for Atlanta, they're definitely going to be up for this game too. But I just feel like in terms of who wants it more, something tells me the Timbers are going to be wants this one more and could be more up for it if this is actually going to be be the MLS Cup matchup. So yeah, in the end, I picked the Portland Timbers in terms of winning MLS Cup, and also I do apologize to any Portland Timbers fan watching this video because I probably just jinxed their team. And I also didn't even mention the fact that I also want to apologize to every single team that I basically jinxed to do well in the playoffs, because I have a feeling that, yeah, I'm gonna get it completely wrong. And again, I won't be surprised the fact that, you know, especially with the way that I picked the Timbers to win MLS Cup, the first way they need to do it is to beat the team that I root for. And as much as I definitely want Minnesota to, of course, move on into the next round, because, you know, when you support for a team, you always want them to move on, even though you don't have a lot of confidence that they will do so. And if that happens, then yeah, my bracket immediately goes into bust, and my prediction of who wins MLS Cup also gone completely bust because of that. But we shall see how this is going to be. I expect this should be another really good playoffs, and you know, usually the playoffs are definitely something that you're going to remember for a very long time. And I just have a feeling this season we're going to have some great memories from this playoffs. I mean, last season, I think probably the one memory I will always remember from last season playoffs is that crazy penalty kick shootout between Orlando City versus NYCFC, where that was probably the most insane and most shithousery penalty kick shootout I've ever seen in my life. Like, you know that it's a crazy penalty shootout when it actually even made world news. Although I know that the world media didn't really kind of paint that as a good way. They just kind of laugh at how MLS once again is one of those bush league that just have those crazy things that happen, and how other leagues probably won't have the same situation. But for me, I just argue the fact that, hey, you know, that's the beauty of MLS. You're going to see some crazy and unexpected thing that happen in the playoffs. And yeah, let's just hope we might have something similar to that. Well, I will say that we will have something similar to that, but let's just hope it's not going to be like in a penalty kick shootout where there's going to be something similar to that, because I think we can all agree that was just, even though I remember that penalty kick shootout and how everything ends up to be correct, it was just such a mess that I think nobody will ever forget that PK shootout of being just such a legendary one in this league history. But either way, hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, make sure you guys leave a like, smash the subscribe button. Let me know in the comments below what do you think of this bracket, and again, go ahead to either agree or mostly disagree in the comment section below, because like I said, this is just my opinion, and my opinion is probably going to be wrong. And once again, I will like to apologize to the Portland Timbers and their fan base that I basically just jinxed them, and that they're probably not going to win MLS Cup this season because I picked them to win it. But nevertheless, hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you guys next time.